All right, so, building a business from scratch, doing it your way, that's what we're diving into today, bootstrapping. And our guide for this deep dive is Make Book, Building Startups the Indie Way.
It's a handbook packed with, well, I'd say unconventional wisdom.
Yeah,
Really makes you think differently about building a business.
absolutely. And the best part is it's not just theory. It's written by someone who's been there, done that, Pieter Levels.
Right. Two-time Product Hunt Maker of the Year, which, if you're in the tech space, you know that's a big deal. Plus, he's the founder of Nomad List, Remote OK, some really cool platforms.
Exactly. So he knows what he's talking about. And one of the things he tackles head on is this whole idea of where do I find that $1,000,000 idea? And his answer really surprised me. He says, forget fancy market research, look inward.
Yeah, he's all about tapping into your own experiences, your own frustrations, those everyday annoyances. That's where he says the magic happens.
And he makes a really compelling case. I mean, look at Nomad List itself. It's a brilliant idea, a platform for digital nomads to connect, find the perfect city to live and work remotely.
And he built that because it was a problem he was facing himself.
Oh, yeah.
Traveling through Asia, trying to figure out the best places to work remotely, good internet, affordable.
So he just started making a list.
Well, a spreadsheet, actually.
Really? Spreadsheet, seriously.
It's amazing how many great things start with a simple spreadsheet. But here's the thing. He accidentally made it editable by anyone.
Whoa. So anyone could just add to it.
Exactly. And that's when things exploded. People started pouring in, adding their own data, city recommendations, insider tips.
It's like he accidentally crowdsourced the ultimate guide for digital nomads.
Exactly. Just by being open to that unexpected turn of events.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best ideas come from embracing the unexpected. But you know what else I found really interesting? He's not a fan of trying to solve massive, world-changing problems right off the bat. He encourages entrepreneurs to start smaller.
Yeah, he's all about finding those micro niches.
Micro niches.
Right. Like instead of trying to build booking software for all hairdressers, what if you focused on those who specialize in, say, African hair?
Okay, I see what you mean.
It's a smaller market for sure, but you're not competing with the giants right away. And your marketing becomes so much more targeted, more effective.
So starting small, in a way, gives you a bigger advantage.
Exactly. You become the go-to solution for a very specific group of people, and that can be incredibly powerful.
So does that mean you're stuck in that niche forever?
That's what's interesting. He addresses that. It's not about staying small. It's about strategic growth.
Yeah.
He calls it multi-niching and vertical integration.
Okay, now you're just using fancy words. Break it down for me. What do those even mean?
So multi-niching is basically about expanding to related niches once you've dominated one. Like with that hair salon example, maybe you then expand to barbershops catering to a similar clientele. You're leveraging your expertise and existing customer base.
Okay, so it's like you're creating a network of related niches.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that ties into vertical integration, which is basically about identifying opportunities within your existing customer ecosystem to offer additional products or services.
Okay, so like with the hair salons, maybe you then offer them, what, point of sale systems, inventory management software?
You got it.
Yeah.
You become a one-stop shop for all their needs. They become reliant on your ecosystem, which makes it harder to leave.
That's brilliant. I love how he's connecting these different concepts together, but I think a lot of people listening might be thinking, okay, this is great, but how do I actually build any of this? I'm not a tech person.
And that's the beauty of Levels' approach. He says you don't need to be a tech whiz to get started. In fact, he actually encourages entrepreneurs to try building that first version, the MVP themselves.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I mean, most people say find a technical co-founder, right? But he actually argues that building it yourself, even with limited coding experience, can be a competitive advantage. Why is that?
He believes that when you're the one knee-deep in the code, even if it's messy, even if you're learning as you go, you gain this invaluable understanding of your product.
Oh, I totally get that. It's like you just understand it on a deeper level, right?
Exactly. You're not limited by someone else's interpretation of your vision.
Yeah.
And from a practical standpoint, you can move through those early iterations so much faster when you're not waiting on a developer for every little tweak.
Right. It's all about that lean startup methodology. Build, test, learn, repeat.
Exactly. And, he's not naive. He knows not everyone's going to become a coding whiz overnight, so he actually highlights some amazing no-code tools that can help you get a functional prototype up and running.
Yeah, he calls them digital Legos, which I love. It's such a great analogy. So what are some of the tools he recommends?
Well, for creating those beautiful, responsive landing pages, he's a big fan of Card. Super user-friendly.
I've heard good things about Card.
Yeah, it's great for getting something up quickly. And then if you want to start collecting information from potential users, like in those early days when you're just testing the waters, he recommends Typeform.
Typeform, yeah. Those are those interactive forms, right?
Exactly. Much more engaging than those old school boring surveys.
For sure. And if you want to dip your toes into automation, even in those early stages, there's Zapier.
Zapier is great. You can connect different web apps and automate tasks without writing a single line of code. It's pretty powerful stuff.
Okay, so we've got to talk about this whole web app versus native app debate because Levels definitely has some strong opinions on this. He's a big proponent of starting with the web.
He is. And for good reason. Web apps are just inherently more flexible. You can update them instantly. You don't have to go through those App Store approval processes, which can be a nightmare.
Right, and anyone with an internet connection can access it, no matter what device they're using. You're not limited by operating systems.
Exactly. Plus, he brings up this really interesting point that the lines between web apps and native apps are getting blurry.
Oh, tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Well, think about how many times you've clicked a link on your phone, and instead of opening in a separate browser window, it opens within the app itself.
Oh, yeah. Like when you click on a link in WhatsApp, for example, it's
Right.
like there's a mini web browser living inside the app.
Exactly. That's called a web view. And Levels sees that trend continuing. So building for the web first gives you that flexibility and that broader reach.
It's like future-proofing your product in a way. So, okay, let's say we've built our MVP. Even if we're not tech wizards ourselves, we're feeling good. Now we're ready to share it with the world. But Levels has some really interesting and honestly refreshing advice about launching.
He does. He's not about chasing hype or trying to manufacture buzz, which is, kind of the opposite of what you hear so often in the startup world.
Right, it's all about crushing it and going viral.
Yeah, but Levels is more grounded. He stresses the importance of having a genuinely functional product first and foremost, not just a flashy website with empty promises.
It's about building something that truly provides value.
Exactly. And he's big on engaging with those early users in a meaningful way. For example, instead of just throwing up a generic subscribe to our newsletter form, think about how you can provide actual value in exchange for that email address.
He gives that great example of the job board for PHP developers. Instead of a generic newsletter, they could offer targeted email alerts for new PHP jobs in the user's area.
Exactly. Give people a reason to want to hear from you.
I love that. So where do you actually launch this thing? He mentions some of the usual suspects, Product Hunt, Hacker News.
He does. But more than just picking the platform, he emphasizes knowing your audience and meeting them where they are.
So don't just launch on Product Hunt because everyone else is doing it.
Right. If you're launching a new line of organic pet food, you're probably not going to find your ideal customer base on Product Hunt. You'd be better off engaging with pet owners in targeted online communities.
Okay, that makes sense. Go where your people are. And then, of course, there's this whole concept of building in public, which Levels is a huge advocate for. What exactly does it mean to build in public? I think a lot of people might be wondering that.
Yeah, it's basically about being transparent about your journey as an entrepreneur, sharing your successes, your struggles, even those moments where you're like, what am I even doing?
So you're pulling back the curtain, letting people see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly. And it might seem counterintuitive, but there are some real benefits to building in public.
Like what? Give me some examples.
For one, it builds trust. People see you're being genuine, not hiding anything, and it's a fantastic way to get early feedback, You're basically turning your audience into collaborators.
Right. It's like you're all in it together. And he talks about Buffer as a great example of a company that's really embraced this, right?
Yeah, they've been incredibly open, sharing their revenue numbers, their challenges, their wins, and it's created this amazing sense of transparency and connection with their audience. People feel like they're part of the Buffer story.
I love that. It's so much more engaging than just, being sold to.
It is. And it taps into this whole desire for authenticity. People can spot a marketing gimmick a mile away these days, but when you're genuinely sharing your journey, it just hits different.
It's like that saying, people want to buy from people.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the idea of building it, launching, even this whole building in public thing. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, money. How do we actually turn this passion project into a profitable business?
Yeah, monetization. It's something a lot of creators struggle with. I know I do.
And Levels gets it. He totally gets it. He talks about that fear that so many of us have, especially when it's something we're really passionate about. Like, can I really charge for this?
Right. It feels weird putting a price tag on something you love.
It does. And he even pokes fun at those, those online forums where people get outraged if you dare to charge for your work. Like, how dare you try to make a living from your creativity?
Oh, I've seen those comments.
It's crazy. But Levels, he reminds us that monetization doesn't have to be this evil, greedy thing. It's about finding a model that aligns with your values, with your audience. And he throws out a bunch of different models to consider.
He talks about charging per feature, subscription models, even those patronage models where your biggest fans can support you directly through platforms like Patreon.
Right, which is huge for a lot of creators these days. And then there are membership communities, which are really interesting.
Membership communities. Tell me more about those.
So it's basically about creating a community around your work and charging a monthly or annual fee for access to exclusive content, resources, that kind of thing.
So you're building a tribe of people who really value what you do.
Exactly. And it creates that recurring revenue, which is really appealing from a business standpoint.
It's a win-win. The members get valuable stuff and you get a more predictable income.
Exactly. And he doesn't stop there. He even talks about building job boards within your niche, conditional payments, all sorts of creative stuff. The point is, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
You've got to experiment and find what works for you. One thing I thought was really clever was his point that even thinking about monetization early on can actually help you validate your idea.
Oh, yeah. He tells that great story about Buffer and their plans and pricing button.
The what?
So before Buffer even had a paid product, they put up a page on their site with different pricing plans just to see if people would click.
Wait, they didn't even have anything to sell.
Nope. But people were so eager to use Buffer, they were clicking that button, ready to hand over their credit card info.
Wow. Talk about validation.
Right. So even if you're not ready to launch a paid product yet, just the act of thinking about monetization can give you valuable insights.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here, from finding those million-dollar ideas to building, launching, even monetizing. But what about the exit, that moment when your side hustle becomes, serious business?
Levels doesn't shy away from that at all. He actually shares his own experiences with acquisition offers, which I found really insightful.
And he keeps it real, right? He talks about the different types of buyers you might encounter, which can be, well, interesting to say the least.
To put it mildly, you've got your deadbeat, non-serious buyers lowballing you with ridiculous offers.
And then there are those who just string you along forever.
Oh, yeah, those string-you-alongers, scheduling calls, rescheduling calls, acting all interested, and then poof, they disappear.
It's brutal. So how do you navigate that whole process? It can be so intimidating.
Well, he talks about the importance of finding mentors, advisors who've been there, done that, people who can give you solid advice. And he breaks down some of the technical stuff like valuation, which can feel like a mystery.
It does. How do you even begin to put a price tag on your business?
Right. It's tough. He uses this example of a company making $100,000 a year in profit. He's like, okay, a common multiple in that situation might be 7x. So ballpark, you're looking at a $700,000 valuation.
So your profit times a certain multiple, which I'm guessing depends on the industry, the company's growth potential, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But he also gets into the nitty-gritty, like the difference between taking cash versus stock options, the potential downsides of earnouts, where part of the payment depends on future performance.
It's like he's giving you the insider's guide to exiting, which can be invaluable.
Totally. And you know what else I found interesting? He doesn't just focus on the traditional exit. He also explores alternative paths, like the FIRE movement, which has gained so much traction lately.
The FIRE movement, right. Financial independence, retire early. It's like the new American dream for some people.
It is. It's all about achieving financial freedom through aggressive saving and investing, often with the goal of retiring way earlier than the traditional retirement age.
So you're not tied to that traditional career path. You have the freedom to do what you want when you want.
Exactly. And for some entrepreneurs, that's the ultimate goal.
It's like that saying, I don't want to be a millionaire. I want to live like one.
Exactly. At Levels, he also talks about angel investing, which is another interesting avenue for entrepreneurs who've successfully exited.
So they're taking their earnings and investing in other startups, kind of paying it forward.
Yeah. It's a way to give back, be a mentor, help shape the future of innovation.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest takeaways from the book, at least for me, is this idea that success doesn't have to look a certain way.
What do you mean?
Well, we often get so caught up in this idea of the big exit, the IPO, the millions of dollars, but Levels challenges us to define success on our own terms.
So it's not just about the money.
Right. It's about creating something valuable, achieving financial freedom, having options. And that might look different for everyone.
I love that. It's about finding your own version of success.
Exactly. And, this whole conversation has got me thinking, what if we all took a step back and really asked ourselves, what does success look like to me? Not to society, not to our parents, but to us. What would we be doing? How would we be living?
Those are great questions. And, I think those are the perfect questions to leave our listeners with today. What does success look like to you? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.